Before Robert from the U.S. Navy contacted us, a couple weeks prior, actually, I got an interesting call from a surveyor. And by that, I mean a land surveyor, commercial land surveyor specifically. He doesn't shoot the line of sight on homes or anything. He does commercials, commercial property, big things like car factories, airport runways, stadiums, that sort of stuff, big tracts of land. And for those of you who don't know what a surveyor is, well, one, you should be looking this up. You should know this, though. These are the people that come out before the foundation is laid, before anything is laid, and they look, they look at elevation, how the ground is laid out, and they spot it for you. And they say, okay, this is how the ground is laid out to the inch, and less than an inch. It's spot on. And their whole job is just checking the ground. They're setting up before the first piece of concrete goes down, they lay it out and make sure the land is laid out exactly before the bulldozers show up. That's what these guys do. And this guy had listened to our show some weeks ago and said, and the whole flat earth concept was kind of getting under his skin. And he's done this his whole career. He had done it from 1979 all the way through 2011, which was 32 years. And he was backtracking. He called me about 3-4 weeks ago, and he said, look, I think you guys may be onto something. He goes, look, I'm a career surveyor. All we do is check the level, the levelness of the ground. And he goes, in 32 years, he goes, I don't remember ever dealing with any curve whatsoever, no matter what we did. And I go, okay. And he goes, well, tell you what, I'll call you back. Let me look through my records. He's going to go through his records all the way back to 1979, because it takes a little while to remember that far back. And then once we did the Navy show with Robert from the Navy, it jogged his whole thing, and he completely got out of his chair, left a message for us during the show when we were talking to Robert, and then I called him back, and we did a little pre-record with him today, which we'll play for you in a little bit. And I did a pre-show with him where he was going, yeah, absolutely. He's basically going to say when he comes out here that he did his entire career in the Midwest, started in Indiana, and he did big tracts of land. And he's basically saying, look, the whole industry of being a commercial surveyor, everything is based on a plane. It's based on a flat model. They say when you shoot your lines and you lay out the land for the construction teams, you're basically working on a flat plane. And I thought that was intriguing. So that's where
it's so funny because it's so simple. You think somebody else would have tripped upon this years and years and years ago.
Yeah, you would have thought so. But in fact, again, it was one of those things, like us, like everybody that's gone down the flat earth road. It's like, wait, why didn't I think of this? And this guy was saying that here's the problem. And he actually asked this when he was younger. And apparently this has just been passed down from generation to generation of surveyors, where they say when somebody asks, well, what about we deal with the curvature? And they go, and the saying is, oh, just don't worry about it because you're working on a flat plane. Right? The project you're working on is a flat plane. Well, the problem is everybody is working on a flat plane. So, and you'll understand when we get into this, this little interview I do with this guy runs, 35, 40 minutes. But you'll understand, and if anyone has any questions, please ask me later. But what they're saying is every surveyor that goes out builds his model like the ground is perfectly flat. You're working on a flat chessboard. But the problem is that you're working on your chessboard and you have to interlock with somebody else that's working on another project next to you, and he's working on a flat chessboard. The problem is eventually those chessboards have to butt up against each other, and the curvature has to come into play at some point, and it never does. Everything interlocks perfectly like Legos, and in a city. So he's going, it doesn't seem like much when you're just working from one piece of property to another, but think about an entire length of city. A city from beginning to end. You can't tell me there's no curve from there's not going to be a conflict from one end of the city to the other end of the city. There's going to be feet of curve that nobody takes into account. They don't even talk about it. So I know, kind of getting ahead of myself. So
isn't that how 13th and a half floors get built and things like that? Just
well, no, that was his point. He's going, look, there should be mistakes. If it's curved, what he was saying is, if it's curved, there should be mistakes everywhere.
Exactly.
Because eventually people are going to have, even accidentally, there should be mistakes because people are going to run into issues. Basically, so let's say here's the mistake I'm talking about. So I have my chessboard, all right, that I'm building. It's perfectly flat because that's what the model I'm building is. And the guy next to me is building a flat chessboard. The problem is if we actually had to take into account the curvature of the Earth, somebody eventually is going to forget the formula. They're not going to plug in the curvature formula. So he's going to butt up against my chessboard, and it's not going to work at all. I'm going to say, oh, did you check your curvature? Did you? And we're going to go back and forth. That argument never, ever happens. It's like, and people are still not getting it. It's like, okay, a surveyor builds his thing on a sphere. It's like trying to cover a basketball with wheat thins. You know, those little brittle square things. Yeah, you can cover it. Let's say you just took glue and you glued the wheat thins all around the basketball. Yeah, you can cover it, but the squares don't line up perfectly because they can't, because they're squares and you're working on a sphere. What he's saying is that everything works. So you wonder why all our cities turn out great? Everything's built just fine. That's because we're just interlocking squares to each other, big flat squares. He goes, there is no curvature. Not that he's ever seen. Now, you know, he's not gonna necessarily wear a flat Earth T-shirt and start walking down the street or anything. But he's saying, look, at 32 years surveying, that's all he does is measure flat land. Never saw it, never accidentally saw it, never talked about it, never had a discussion, either inside of work or outside of work with, you'd think, over a couple beers somebody would mention something.